everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this super easy hexagon cardigan. This is made with a solid hexagon, meaning that it's not like a granny hexagon. If you're looking for a granny hexagon cardigan pattern, I do have one called the Art Class Cardigan, and that is a really easy pattern as well, and it's a little bit different of a stitch. This we're using this is solid double crochets that we're using for the entire piece, and it's 2 hexagons that we've cleverly folded and seamed together to make a gorgeous cardigan sweater. This yarn is very soft, beautiful colors. It looks very seasonal right now, but you can really make this in any colors, of course, and you can make it in solid colors as well. We're going to learn how to make this every step of the way. We're going to learn how to first make the 2 hexagons. We're going to make 2 and put them together. Then we're going to learn how to seam them up. We're going to do a seam that runs up the back of the sweater. Actually, let me flip it over so you can see it. We're going to do a seam. The back of the sweater looks really fun too. We're going to do a seam that runs up the back of the sweater, and then we're going to seam up the shoulders, and that will give us our lovely shape here. So we're going to do 2 seams, one on one shoulder, one on the other, and that will create our sleeve. So it's a really fun sweater to make. It's really neat how it comes together, and I know these are popular right now. And I wanted to thank all of you who requested this sweater. Like I mentioned before, we have a granny hexagon cardigan pattern and video, but this is a solid hexagon. It gives a little bit different look, and the striping is really fun. So again, I'll put the link down below for the granny hexagon cardigan if you want to try that one as well. So let's get started. Okay, let's talk a little bit about sizing. I wanted to mention, and we're going to talk about this throughout the video today, that the sizing is very customizable. It really depends on how large or small you're making each hexagon, because the hexagon will determine the opening of the sleeve, the height, the width, everything about it. So I find if you're making a hexagon cardigan for the first time, to make your cardigan, or to make your hexagons, and sort of like, I like to clip mine together and sort of like slip it on one arm and see how it looks. So you can do that and kind of measure as you go along, but I'm going to give you some measurements of the finished sweater that I have here, just to give you a frame of reference. So if we measure from the top straight down, that is about 18 inches tall. If we measure across the bottom edge, if we just go straight across here, that's about 18.5 inches. If we go right in the center here and across, it's about 18 inches as well. And then if we go straight across from one end to the other, now it curves a little bit, so we're going to account for that. But I'm going to pull a little bit more tape measure out here. That is going to be roughly 37.5 inches. And then if we look at our sleeve, if we measure from, across our sleeve here, that's going to be about 9 inches, okay? So just to give you some rough measurements here. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle to weave in ends and sew it all up. We're going to be using a tape measure to get the exact sizing that we want. Now this is a customizable sweater, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along through the project as well, but a tape measure will be super helpful. We're going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook for this project. This is my Furls Streamline Wood. I'll put the link down below if you'd like to get one for yourself. And these are optional, don't necessarily need them, but I find them very handy, are some removable stitch markers. Now, when we make our 2 hexagons and fold them together and start assembling things to seam, it's really helpful to use something to kind of hold everything together while you're seaming. I like to use removable stitch markers. They kind of just clip everything into place. You could use some people use those kind of like sewing, those little tiny clips used for sewing. Some people, you could use clothespins, you could just use some yarn scraps and just tie little bows, but just something to kind of hold it together while you're seaming is super helpful. Not completely necessary, but I find it to be very helpful. Let's talk about this beautiful yarn that I have here. I have some lovely kind of earth tones, some really nice wearable colors here that we're going to be using. This is called Color Theory from Two of Wands and Lion Brand yarn. I've used it for some of my other projects in the past. You may recognize this yarn or have used it yourself. This is a very soft worsted weight yarn that comes in a lot of really pretty colors. These are just some of them. It comes in other colors as well. Again, I'll put a link down below if you'd like to get some of this yarn for yourself as well. Now, this is, again, called Color Theory, and I'm going to be using this spectrum here, and I kind of have them in order of the colors that I'll be using. So this cream color here is called Ivory. This kind of light beige color is called Bone. And then this really just like a muted peach color is called Himalayan Salt. And then I have this like warm brown, it's called Nutmeg. And then this kind of like a rusty brown is called Raisin. And then this lovely olive green color is called Caper. So I'm going to be using 6 balls of this yarn. So each ball of this yarn is 246 yards, 225 meters, 3.5 ounces, and 100 grams. So I'm going to be using 6 balls of this. So the total yardage is 1,476 yards, and that will make us a nice generous sweater. Now, if you want to make your sweater bigger than the sizes we talked about earlier, obviously you'll need more yarn. But this is, because we're doing a hexagon shape, you can just keep adding on to it. So this project is a great candidate for some stash busting if you have some colors that you want to put into your sweater. If you need to substitute yarn, look on your yarn label for it's usually a little ball of yarn with a number in the middle. We're going to be using a medium 4 on the yarn weight scale and a yarn that recommends a 5.5 millimeter eye crochet hook. So if you look for both of those things in the 1,476 ish amount of yards, you'll be just fine. Now I said ish because, if you wanted to change the sizing or I'm going to show you some edging on the bottom that you can extend the bottom, you can extend the sleeves, etc. But we will talk about sizing as we go through the project and learn how to make your hexagons bigger by adding more rounds, make your sweater longer, and etc. So let's get started. We're going to start first by making our 2 hexagon shapes, and then later in the video we'll be doing some assembly and some edging like I talked about before. So let's get started. Okay, I'm going to grab the first color because we're going to do 2 rounds of each color working outward. So my first color, and what we're going to do to begin, I'm just going to zoom way in so you can see up close, is we're going to put a slip knot on our hook to begin. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook into that loop, bring up that center loop and tighten, okay? Next, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 4. We're going to do a ring. We're going to make a ring that we'll be working all of our stitches into. Now we're going to do the starting chain method. If you'd like to use the magic ring, please feel free to do that. Some people prefer that over the starting chain. We're going to do the starting chain together. So what we're going to do is chain 4. To make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to join in the farthest chain from the hook with a slip stitch to create the ring. So insert the hook into that chain farthest from the hook, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring up a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. Bring this loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and now we have our ring. You can kind of open it up to see it a little bit better and to have some more room to work your stitches in. Also, this tail here, we're going to hold this tail along the edge as we work, and that will weave it in as we go along. So let's move on to round 1. For round 1, what we'll do is chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This counts as our first double crochet. Then we're going to work 2 double crochets into the center of the ring. So to make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. So that was one of our double crochets. And now we need to make a second one. So work a second double crochet into that ring. And then we're going to chain 2. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to work this time 3 double crochet, chain 2 into the center of the ring. And we're going to do that 5 times and we'll go through it together. So let's begin. Work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, and then chain 2, 1, 2, and then repeat. So still holding that tail along the edge as we work. So work 3 double crochet into the center. 1, 2, and 3, chain 2. Okay, let me just get a little bit more yarn. All right. Pushing things over as needed if you need to give yourself more space in that ring. Then we're going to work 3 double crochet into the center of the ring. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, pushing things over as needed. And then let's repeat that again. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, and chain 2. Okay, let's work that last repeat. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to join to close the round. So we're going to count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3. Remember that chain 3 that counted as a double crochet? Count 3 chains up, and we're going to join with a slip stitch. So insert your hook into that 3rd chain up, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and the round is closed. Okay, so now we have a little mini hexagon. And you can kind of sharpen up those corners if you need to like have a little bit more definition of your hexagon, but we have a little mini hexagon. Now what I like to do is pull this tail in tight and just trim it so that tail's not in my way. Now we wove it in as we went along, so we can just kind of get that out of the way now. Okay, so let's move on to round 2. Round 2 is the round that you'll repeat for the rest of your hexagon, okay? So like I mentioned before, also, we're going to do 2 rounds of each color. So let's do round 2 together, and then when we are finished round 2, we'll switch colors, okay? So what we need to do is chain 3 once again for round 2. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work, now that again, that counts as a double crochet. So now we're going to work a double crochet in each of these stitches until we get to this corner space. So from here on out, these chain 2 spaces that we created, see how it's like a space and then a grouping of double crochets and then a space, and that's what creates those hexagon points. These are called the corner spaces in the written pattern, okay? So we're going to work a double crochet in each stitch until we get to the corner space. So double crochet, next stitch, double crochet, and now we're at a corner space, okay? So for corner spaces for the entire hexagon, on and on and on, are going to be 2 double crochets into that corner space. So 1 and 2, and then a chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 more double crochets in the same space. And that's how you'll do all the corners for the entire hexagon. Okay, so 1 double crochet and 2 double crochet, just like that. Now work a double crochet in each stitch across till you get to the next corner space, okay? Now you may have to kind of scoot what you did over a little bit to see that first stitch. Sometimes it gets kind of smushed and buried. So work a double crochet in each of the next, in each stitch across until you get to the next corner space. So double crochet, double crochet, double crochet. And I didn't mention this before, but your stitches that you're working in the sides, these are the sides of your hexagons, and then the corner spaces are the corners, okay? Your side stitches will grow each round you do. So you'll have more side stitches each time, but the corners will always be worked the same, okay? So we're at the next corner space. So you're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then chain 2, and then 2 double crochet in that corner space. 1 and 2, just like that. Okay, now we're at a side again, so we're going to work a double crochet in each stitch across until we get to the next corner space. So double crochet, double crochet, whoops, and double crochet. Okay, we're at a corner space again, so you'll do that the same way we've been doing for the other corner spaces. So 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. 1 and 2. Okay, now we're going to work a double crochet in each stitch across so we get to that next corner space. So double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and we're at a corner space again. So you'll do that the same way. Double crochet, so 2 double crochet, then chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 double crochet into that same space, 1 and 2, just like that, okay? All right, working down the next side, work a double crochet in each stitch across till you get to that next corner space. So double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, next corner space, 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and chain 2, and 2 double crochet in that same space. So 1 and 2, just like that, okay? Work a double crochet in each stitch across, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet. And now we're at our last corner. So you're just going to work 2 double crochet, 1, 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. Okay? Now we're going to close round 2 the same way we've been doing it so far. So count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and join with a slip stitch to close the round. Now I'm just gonna, there you go. Sometimes you have to wiggle it a little and then join to close the round, okay? So round 2 is complete. Now, you may be noticing that your hexagon is kind of curling a little bit. That's a good thing. We want that to happen. And I just wanted to show you how that works in your favor for this particular project. We're putting some extra stitches in each corner, so it's kind of like, in a way, it like crowds the side, so it creates that waviness. Now you can see this one here that I have worked a little bit farther along. You can see it's very curly, okay? Now let me just zoom out so you can see how curly it is? It's not laying flat at all. That's what we want, because later on, when it gets much, much bigger, we're going to fold our hexagon. And if you made the art class cardi with me, which was a granny hexagon, it's the same concept. We just have a more solid fabric this time. But when we fold it in half, all of a sudden it lays flat. It lays beautifully and perfectly and nice and flat. So what we want to do is just keep going, and it's all going to kind of fall into place. Now this is actually going to be one of the sleeves and the front, and we'll have a second one, and they'll be seamed together, okay? But I just wanted to show you because sometimes I get a lot of questions when we're doing these hexagon cardigan sweaters, because they start getting curly and it makes people a little bit nervous because things aren't normally supposed to curl, but this is one where we use it to our advantage, okay? Okay, so back to our hexagon that we were working on. Round 2 is complete. And like I said before, we're going to do 2 rounds of each color. So we're ready to move on to another color. The next color, if we look at our other hexagon here, is this nutmeg color, okay, after the green. We want to make them, when we're working on our hexagons, well, let me just bring this back here so you can see. When we're working on our hexagons, we want to, there we go. We want to make sure that they match, okay? So when you wear it, the colors are going to line up nicely, okay? So let's go back to this one, and we're going to grab our new color. And so what we want to do, now there's lots of different ways to join yarn. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to snip this off and tie the new color right on, okay? So just cut the yarn. If you have a preferred way of joining the yarn, please feel free to do that. Wrap the yarn around your hook and bring it through the loop. Okay, now grab your new color. I love these beautiful earth tones. They're so nice and easy to wear. So what we want to do is go back into that stitch where we just tied this off. Okay, you can use this little tail as a reference, but go back in with your hook. You might need to wiggle it depending on how tightly you tied it. And we're going to hook that new yarn right on, and we're going to bring it through. Okay. Now, go ahead and tie the new yarn right on there. And again, if you have a preferred way of doing this, definitely feel free to do that. Now, grab your hook again and go right back in that same stitch, bring up a loop, and you're ready to begin a new round. Now, we can do a few stitches together just to show you. So once again, we're going to be repeating round 2 over and over and over until our hexagon is as large as we need it to be to fit our particular size that we're after, okay? So what we want to do to begin the round is to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Remember, this counts as a double crochet. And then we'll go in and we'll work a double crochet in each stitch across. 1, 2, all the way across until we get to the next corner space. Now you may notice, like I mentioned in the last round, each time we add a round, we're adding extra side stitches, okay? And now we're at a corner space. So again, we'll work the corner spaces the same way. 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet, all in that same space, okay? So just continue around working the same way we did before, just repeating round 2 over and over, and our hexagon is growing. So as you can see, look, we have more side stitches this time, okay? So I'm going to continue around, and we get towards the end of this round. I want to show you one more thing before we kind of depart and work on our hexagons. Okay, we came all the way around, and now we're at our last corner space. So go ahead and work it the same way. So 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet all in that corner space. Now, I wanted to show you one more little thing before we depart and start working on our hexagons on our own. You may notice that because we start our round kind of in the middle of one of the sides, you will have another stitch or two when you do your next round left over. And as you keep going around and around, now let me grab my other hexagon and show you, that will grow because your hexagon is growing. So that will, you will have some stitches after you make that last corner space. So you just basically, the rule of thumb for the hexagons is basically wherever you see a stitch, work a stitch in there. And then whenever you see a corner space, work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So if you stick with that general guideline, you'll be just fine. So as we come around and work that last corner space, we still have a stitch here to work a double crochet into, and then our last stitch, okay? And you will find as you work each round, you know, you'll have some more stitches at the end there after that last corner space because it is growing, okay? So then what we're going to do is just work in that same thing we did before. In that 3rd chain up, work a slip stitch to close the round. Bring that loop up, bring the loop through the loop already on your hook, and then you're ready to go, okay? So we'll just keep going and keep adding rounds until you have 2 hexagons of the same size. You want to work the same number of rounds for your hexagons. Now when we rejoin, we'll have two much larger hexagons here. And we're going to work on, I'm going to show you again how to fold them that special way, because you can fold them. This is how we want to fold them so they make an L shape, but you can fold them in a way that like this, that may not make sense. Okay, so we're going to work on folding our hexagons and seaming our hexagons next. Okay, so but at this point you just want to keep working on your rounds, on your hexagon rounds. Keep going through the colors, whatever color order that you chose, and just keep adding on more and more rounds. Now, I did 2 rounds of each color. You could do 1 round. You could do much thicker stripes than I'm doing. You could, instead of like this kind of gradient order that I'm doing them in, you could put all kinds of different colors and mix them up. So keep going, repeating round 2 over and over and over again until your hexagon is as large as you need it to be. If you're not sure how large to make it, you could always take some stitch markers or even some clips and kind of clip it together up here at the top and just slip an arm in there and see how it fits. That's what I do as I go along. But when we get back, I'll give you some dimensions of our hexagon and how many rounds I work, just to give you an idea, okay? And so I'm going to keep going, working my round 2 over and over and over again. So we have 1 round of this color, so we're going to stick with this color for the next round because we're doing 2 rounds of each color. So keep repeating round 2. When we have 2 large identical hexagons, we'll rejoin and we'll move on to the next part. All right, just working the last stitch of the last round of our hexagon, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to close the round like we've been doing every round. And our hexagons are complete. Now I just wanted to point out, as you may notice, I did 2 rounds of each color for my hexagon. I did make a little bit of a design choice later on and put just 1 round, just to give it almost like a edging, but in color. You know, it's the same stitch, same round and everything. It's not in a different edging or anything like that, but just doing 1 round sort of frames it in a little bit. So what we want to do now is cut the yarn and fasten off. I've already made the second hexagon as well. And let me just scoot this yarn out of the way because we're going to use some of this matching yarn to sew our sweater next. But we need to sort of lay things out first. Now you can go over to the blog and see, the link is down below. You can see how everything's all laid out. How we folded it and just sort of laid out flat if you want to have a photo for reference. But I have 2 hexagons. Both hexagons are the same size, the same number of rounds, etc. If we lay our hexagon flat, I wanted to show you, it's going to look very crinkly. You've probably noticed this as you were working on your hexagons. You can see it doesn't lay flat. That's what we want. That's a good thing. But if I lay it flat and measure from its widest points, I did want to give you that measurement before we start sewing it together. So if we go to the end here, go all the way straight across to its widest point, that is going to be about 26 inches, okay? Now, you can keep working more rounds if you want to and make your cardigan bigger, and likewise, you could work less rounds if you need it to be smaller. So what we want to do is take our hexagon and fold it. Now, if you just take the 2 widest points and fold it in half, it's going to make a shape like this, okay? That's not what we want. We want to fold it so that it makes more of an L shape, okay? So you might need to like play around with it a little bit until you get the shape that you need. So you can just sort of keep turning the points. Sometimes if you've never made a hexagon sweater, it can be a little confusing the first time you do it. So fold your first hexagon in half like so, and you can see this is going to be our sleeve and this will be the front of our hexagon. And like I mentioned before, that last round that I did, see how it sort of frames everything in nicely, it frames the sleeve out. So let's scoot that over and we're going to grab our next hexagon and we want to just fold it the same way. If you need to play around with it a little bit, feel free to do that. Sometimes I need to try a few different ways and we'll have the same thing, but you want to flip this one so that you have a, a sweater shape. Okay, so get everything nice and flat and lay it out. And we have now the beginnings of our cardigan. This is going to be the opening, okay? So let's start sewing. The easiest seam that we're going to sew is if you open your cardigan up, we're going to sew right down the middle here, okay? So grab a piece of yarn and the same color, preferably, so it blends. And we're going to cut about 18 inches or so, give or take. Grab your tapestry needle and just thread it. With the same yarn. And then you can start from the bottom or the top, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom and we're just going to join these two corners. Just go in the corner space just to keep it symmetrical. And what we're going to do is pull it almost all the way through and then just tie it at the bottom, okay? So just tie it right on. And then we're going to start whip stitching up the middle, okay? So what you're going to do is just sandwich the two pieces together like that and just try to catch both loops for each layer, okay? So you can look at it and see what is going to look best. You want your seam to be nice and neat, okay? So just sandwich them together and then just whip stitch it. The whip stitch, if you're not familiar, is just a spiral through your work, okay? You're just going to sew a spiral through your work. And it's a nice kind of hidden camouflage type seam, okay? So you're just going to do this all the way up, and then when we rejoin, we'll tie this off, and then we'll start working on the sleeves next. Okay, just coming up to the very top of our seam here, and I'm going to pull it almost all the way through, leaving a loop. Send the needle through that loop and it'll kind of tie it off. I like to put another knot just to be sure, make sure it's nice and secure. And then what you can do is straighten out your seam and you can weave that end in while it's still on the needle, and that'll save you a little step later, okay? So just go one direction, you can weave it in another direction just to lock that tail into place and then snip. Okay. So now we're ready to work the sleeve. Okay, once again, we're going to need our matching yarn. You can cut a piece off, about 12 to 18 inches again. Not as long, it's not as long of a seam. And we're going to seam the sleeve. So go down to one of your sleeves, go across here. We can close this back up because it's now officially a sweater. We just have to sew the top. Okay, so at the top of our sleeves here, we're going to do a little bit of measuring because we want it to be the same on both sides. We want to kind of have a neck opening and have the shoulder. So what I would recommend is if you are making this for someone or yourself, maybe pop it on and grab some stitch markers or some yarn scraps. And what we'll do is mark it with a stitch marker, okay? So I'm going to grab 2 stitch markers, one for each sleeve, and we're going to kind of mark it. And you want to make sure that it's measured from the end of your sleeve here to your marker. You want it to be the same on both sides. Okay, so if we look at our sleeve, I went ahead and pinned the bottom corner just to hold it in place, and then all the way here to create the neck opening. I did the same thing on the other side. So I pinned the bottom and then over here to where I want to stop seaming, okay? So what these 2 stitch markers in between here, this is going to be open, okay? And we're going to seam here and here. Again, there's a little chart on Flux where the link is below where you can look and see where to sew if you need to refer back to it. So what we're going to do next is, oh, and as a side note, I measured this is about 4.5 inches and 4.5 inches, okay? So what we're going to do now is we've already threaded our needle and cut our yarn. So I'm going to grab that and we want to turn this inside out. Okay, so grab your first sleeve and turn the sleeve inside out. And you can see here, let's just turn it so you can see it better. You can see here we have our 2 stitch markers. So we just need to seam across here. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we did before. Take out your first stitch marker and we're going to go, I'm going to tie the yarn right into those corner spaces. Okay, so go ahead with your needle into that corner space, pull it almost all the way through and just tie it right on. Okay, so just tie it and tie it, okay? Now we're gonna, once again, sandwich up these edges and we're gonna whip stitch across. And if you have some ends that get in the way, it's okay. Just kind of scoot them out of the way for now. We'll deal with all the ends in a little bit. Okay, so just go right in there with your seam. If you have an end that gets in the way, you can just kind of scoot it over, but we're gonna whip stitch all the way across, okay? And we're gonna go all the way across to the next stitch marker. Just like that, okay? So go across with your whip stitch, and when we get towards the end where we're approaching this next stitch marker down here, we will rejoin and finish up our shoulder. Just coming up to the end, we've arrived at our stitch marker, and I'm gonna do the same thing, leave a loop in there so you can send the needle through and tie it off. And I like to do that more than once just so it's nice and secure, okay? And then once again, while that, we can take our stitch marker out too. Once that you're done tying it off, you can seam it, or weave it, excuse me, weave in the end while you still have your needle here, okay? So just go with your needle in one direction once again, and then go back in the other direction with your tail and you can snip that off, okay? So our sleeve on one side is complete, and let's look at our handiwork here. You can kind of straighten out your seam. We can zoom out so you can see it better. You can straighten out your seam, turn it right side out. The seam looks very nice on this side, and it looks like a sweater. Now, repeat the same thing for the other side. I've already marked it. Once again, you're going to turn it inside out, and let's flip it so we can get to it a little bit easier. But we're just going to start at the corner with our first stitch marker and go across to the other stitch marker as well. So just repeat for that side as well. So our ends are woven in. It has some beautiful colors, some nice striping. I really love how all the stripes kind of wrap around the sweater because of our hexagon design. And it's just such a soft, wearable sweater. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as me. So that is how you crochet an easy hexagon cardigan. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.